Good evening. My name is Alan Haley. I'm the Director of Development and Communications for Lawyers Committee for Better Housing. Welcome to this evening's episode of Tenant Thursdays. Lawyers Committee for Better Housing is a 40-year-old organization that advocates for renters facing unjust evictions and living in substandard housing. We primarily serve renters living in the private, unsubsidized housing market, providing our clients with a range of free, legal, and supportive services that are designed to help them maintain housing stability and avoid homelessness. As one might imagine, our services have never been in greater demand than they are now due to the COVID pandemic. And we have been holding these weekly and periodic Tenant Thursdays events to provide clients, renters, and community organizations and advocates with updated information about changes to legislation, such as Governor Pritzker's moratorium on eviction filings in Illinois. Tonight, we are gathering to talk about some recent changes to the moratorium and how those changes impact renters. So tonight, our guest is Michelle Gilbert. Michelle is Lawyers Committee for Better Housing's legal director, and she leads our COVID-19 eviction prevention project. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you, Ellen, and thanks for organizing this so that we can get the word out to tenants about how they can protect their rights.
So we want to cover a lot of ground tonight, so let's get to it. And by way of a refresher, Michelle, could you tell our guests who the eviction moratorium provides protection to?
I think that everyone has heard or knows that there has been an eviction moratorium in place. And by eviction moratorium, I mean that the sheriff cannot execute eviction orders, and that under certain circumstances, landlords cannot file eviction cases. As we've been through this pandemic for more than a year now, that the requirements of that eviction moratorium have changed. At first, basically no one could file an eviction unless there was a health and safety violation. In November, it changed so that the only people who were protected from an eviction filing were people who filed with their landlord a declaration. And the declaration is 4 requirements, basically that they have COVID economic impact, that they have lower income, pretty high standard though, that they are making good faith attempts at making some partial payments as best as their circumstances allow, and that they have nowhere else to go or they would become homeless if they were to be evicted. So if this is news to anyone about the declaration, then they should look back at a couple of Tenant Thursdays earlier where we've talked about the declaration, and in particular, where we've talked about using LCBH's rentervention tool to create a declaration.
And Michelle, who can be considered an eligible renter or covered person? Are there restrictions that apply to this?
It requires that you're able to truthfully answer 4 questions: that you have income below $99,000, that you have had COVID economic impact. And that can be that you lost your job, that your hours were cut, that you had to voluntarily quit so that you could stay home to take care of someone, or that you, either somebody who was sick, or you might have needed to stay home because your children were doing remote learning and so you couldn't go to work. So I think COVID economic impact is going to be pretty broadly defined. Where it gets a little tricky is the 3rd prong, which is that you have made good faith efforts to make partial payments. And I think once we get through these basics, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this third piece of it. And then again, the fourth piece, that if you were to be evicted, you would not have anywhere else to go. I think that that's probably true for most of us. We don't have a second home that we can go to. So those four things need to be true, but not just true, you know, in the sense that you know that they're true. You need to do a declaration, and you need to give the declaration to the landlord. And again, that's why rent-intervention is great. You don't have to go somewhere and print a declaration. You have to go find it on the internet. You just go to rent-intervention. It applies throughout the state of Illinois. You answer some simple questions, click on things, and it will create the declaration for you. Most important to me is it will email it to you. You can email it to a landlord, and it keeps this chain of being able to prove that you got it to the landlord. And every time I'm going to do Tenant Thursday, I'm probably going to end up saying the same thing, regardless of the topic. If you're talking to an attorney, you need to document. It doesn't matter what's true. It matters what I can prove. So if you're emailing it, save the emails, maybe do a red receipt, you know, follow it up with an email. If you're going to go ahead and print it, if you're going to put it in like a Dropbox where you pay your rent, then just take a picture of it. Don't ever give away your only copy of some important legal document. And, you know, even if it's just take a picture with your phone, you put it in the Dropbox, just take a picture of your hand by the Dropbox, because you may be in a position where you need to prove that you gave it to your landlord.
And so you've been talking about landlords and tenants. Could you maybe elaborate on what the order requires landlords to do if they were to challenge a declaration?
Yes, very good point. So I will say that the executive order does require landlords to give tenants a blank copy of the declaration form. Tenants can still do the rent-intervention tool, but landlords are required to give the blank declaration form. So that catches, that's kind of the what happened in the previous episodes part of this program. So that if you didn't know about declarations before, that gives you some information about declarations. Now, at the end of February, the Illinois Supreme Court was involved and passed a change to the procedure about declarations in eviction court, and specifically said that if a landlord thinks that a declaration is not true, then the landlord can still file an eviction and has to file a motion explaining that they believe that the declaration is untrue. Now, I will say that the way it passed in February, we weren't too pleased with. We did get involved in some letter writing, and then the court issued another order. So landlords still have the ability to file this motion to say that the declaration is not true, but they have to put some facts. They can't just say, oh, I don't think it's true. They have to explain why they think it's true, some facts about income. And that really gets us to this point about the good faith attempts to make payments. And I can move into that unless you want to have any other questions about the order.
I think you've covered this, but are there any important revisions that were made to the court order that people should be aware of? Anything that it clarified that from the previous version?
It did. There was a recent clarification that explains that the landlords have to put facts in their motion, that the burden is on the landlord to prove that the declaration is false. And some more clarifying positions for the judges, the trial court judges who are looking at the declaration. Also makes clear that if the court rejects the filing, then the court file will be sealed. So I commend the court, listened to some advocates and made some changes. We are seeing a lot more filings. This is pretty recent news. I don't have the most current numbers, but I can tell you we're literally in eviction court every day, and we are definitely seeing more and more cases being filed, and we're seeing more motions challenging declaration. So I think that one word I'd like to get out to tenants is things that they can do to help themselves prevent or win a challenge to their declaration.
So, just you talking about this concern about challenges to the declaration, it seems that it's important that you be very detailed in terms of what you're putting in the declaration form. Can you elaborate on that some?
Well, the declaration form is actually written by the state Illinois Housing Development Authority. So you're going to use that form declaration. You're not going to put extra facts into that.
Oh, okay.
But so one of the issues is, for example, a tenant may actually have zero income. So obviously they're not going to be able to pay any rent. Or they may have a modest income and just really extraordinary expenses. Need to have food delivered, paying lots of other expenses because of stay-at-home orders or because they've been sick. So there can be circumstances where people just have no money to pay rent. And the order recognizes that. I would recommend, though, if you have, if you're getting some hours back, maybe at one point you had no income. You worked at an establishment that completely closed, but now it's opening up a little, you're getting some hours. Maybe you, maybe because your child is back in physical school part-time, you can work some part-time hours. If you now have some money, not a lot, you have some money, it's nowhere near what you owe, but you should still talk to your landlord and try to make a partial payment. A lot of landlords, if they've told you in the past they won't accept partial payments, I would still try to make that partial payment and let them reject it again. And if they do that, then they can't say you're not trying to make partial payments, because you actually are. And just like save documents, maybe email the landlord, I know that I owe a couple of months, but I have a little bit of money now. I'd like to put a little bit of money down, and if the landlord says, no way, don't talk to me unless you have 50%, save that email. I may want that someday. Apply for rental assistance. There really is a big chunk of money, a total of nearly $800 million that has come from the federal government to the state of Illinois. And people can apply to the Illinois Housing Development Authority. If you're listening, write this down. It's ihda.org. They're going to be administering about $500 million. The City of Chicago Department of Housing also has federal rental assistance money. It is enough money to pay back rental debt 12 months back. So it will pay April 2020 to March 2021 and 3 months in the future. And the IHDA has said that they will give grants. They will go up to $25,000. I mean, if you are listening to this and you're just, you know that there's a lot of money, I'm telling you that there's money out there that you can apply for. And that's going to be open in about 2 weeks. If you need rental assistance, I would get that ihda.org typed into your computer and, just keep checking it. They say that it's going to be available, somewhere May 10, May 15, something like that. But it's going to be available soon. And applying for rental assistance is actually helps you with the third prong of the declaration, that you are trying to get money to the landlord. So, it's another thing to talk about with your landlord. Not all landlords are going to be listening to a program like this. They're not going to know about the rental assistance. If the landlord gives you a 5-day notice, if the landlord gives you a form declaration, ask the landlord if they know about the IDA rental assistance program. That landlord and the tenant can apply together. And that's good, not just to be able to keep people to stay, but so that they don't owe that money. And then the landlord can get one big check. It's what we want. We want there not to be a housing crisis.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. I have posted links for ida.org, and I stepped away for a minute and I grabbed the link to the City of Chicago rental assistance. So those are in the chat. And
I'll say, and we will be posting those on our Facebook page. As we get information, we're going to be putting it up and sharing it. So, if all of these, oh my gosh, she's going to say something again, some other different website, if you just check back to our Facebook page, we're going to be putting all the information about rental assistance we can find.
I wonder if folks have questions or are wondering about what happens when the moratorium ends on May 1st. Is the moratorium just continuing to be extended? And what's you had your crystal ball, what should we expect?
Well, some people actually may be wondering that they heard about a federal moratorium. And so at the end of 2020, or actually I should say September 1st, 2020, the Center for Disease Control, the CDC, entered a moratorium that eventually lasted until the end of 2020. And then it was extended. It is now in place until June 30. So it also has a declaration requirement. Right now, the Illinois moratorium is better than the CDC moratorium. But so the worst case scenario is if the Governor Pritzker doesn't extend the Illinois moratorium, we have the CDC moratorium to rely on. I think logically, I don't know, that Governor Pritzker will continue the Illinois moratorium, probably making some change or here or there, because there have been changes throughout. But I think the basic moratorium will be in place as long as the CDC moratorium. Because why change horses now? Okay. But that's just my logical thought on it. No inside information from the governor. I will say, I know the governor is very committed. I've heard this from, various department heads. I've had various conversations with the director of the IHDA that I was talking about. Everything I've heard from the administration is that they want to get the rental assistance out to protect tenancies, to protect people's long-term credit histories, to get money to landlords, you know, because we don't want a mortgage foreclosure crisis. So I know that the governor previous executive orders have mentioned the rental assistance program. I know they're working really hard to get that up and going. I really feel like the governor will continue to extend the moratorium to allow the rental assistance dollars to work.
Well, that would be wonderful. Question, Michelle, what should somebody do if their landlord gives them a new 5-day notice after they've submitted a declaration?
Well, I think it's one of those things you may say, this makes me think of my mom a little bit, who, you know, she would ask me sometimes the answer to something and she would say, well, that's just the legal answer. What's the real answer? Okay, so the legal answer is that once the tenant has given the landlord a declaration, the landlord can't continue the eviction process. But none of the moratoria have talked about like how long the declaration lasts. So if I gave my landlord a declaration in January, the legal answer probably is that that 5-day notice is no good and I can ignore it. But the legal answer is not going to help you if the landlord has filed the case anyway. To me, the practical real world answer is if you get a new 5-day, then give the landlord a new declaration. Whether that's because you got it in an email, say, hey, landlord, I gave you this declaration. I'm sending it to you again. Or go create another one, send another one. And you may be thinking like, well, legally, I don't have to do that. But I'm saying real world, maybe the landlord lost it. You know, maybe you dropped it off in that mail slot and it went under the chair. You know, better to be protective, do another one, touch base. You know, I was talking to a tenant the other day in exactly this situation. He says, oh, I got a new 5-day and I shouldn't have. Well, it was a really, really big landlord office, very big development, not so far away from where I live here on the southeast side. And I said, you know, just get them another declaration. They've got a lot of property under management. Better to be safe than sorry. That's how lawyers are. That's one of our phrases. Always better to be safe than sorry.
What should folks who are watching this tonight do if they need more information or they're having a crisis right now?
You can go to our Rentervention page. It's 24/7. Can answer questions about all of these things that we've been talking about. You can call the Cook County Legal Aid for Housing and Debt, which we've talked about in earlier Tenant Thursdays. It has been set up by the Cook County government. It serves landlords and tenants and homeowners throughout Cook County, and that's both suburban and city of Chicago. They're CCLAD or CLAD, I'm not sure about this acronym, has a webpage. You can put a little information in and start that process. Also 24/7, or you can give them a call during normal business hours. And that call should be live answered. If you're in the position right now where you have court papers, I am glad that you have turned to us. You can, if you have a court date in eviction court, definitely you should go. You again, better to be safe than sorry. You can't disregard court papers. If you go to eviction court and it's going to be Zoom like we're doing here, where you're going to call in, If you don't know what to do with Zoom, you can go to the Daily Center or to a suburban courthouse. They have locations, but you can do Zoom on your phone or whatever. So you go to court by looking at your phone and just ask for early resolution. You will be sent to right there. They give you a new Zoom link. You can talk to one of our attorneys. Again, this is for either landlords or tenants who don't have an attorney. If you're a landlord and you want to do things right and you want to get advice about what to do with your tenant, you can also call CCLAD. If you filed some court papers already and you're like, oh, I'm not sure if I did the right thing, when you go to court, you can ask for ERP. Certain groups are representing landlords, certain groups are representing tenants. Same thing. Get a new Zoom link and you're going to talk to in person an attorney, and we can either help you just give you advice and explain what's going on. We can try to work out a settlement with your landlord, or we can consider whether we can represent you. But I know that getting court papers is really scary. And there's a temptation to, put them in the back of the drawer, but you can't ignore them. You have to go to court. But now more than ever, there are people sitting in court, not literally, like this, sitting there available to help you.
Michelle, you mentioned Cook County Legal Aid for Housing and Debt, and I've posted the link to that website. You mentioned a phone number. Do you know that phone number?
I can look it up really quickly. It is 855-956-5763. I don't think I can put it in the chat.
Oh, I put it in.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
It's not one of those catchy phone numbers.
Facebook is wanting to put in some other Facebook person. Okay, I am just going to use the acronym and trust that people will know what that is. Okay, Michelle, any other bits of information that we haven't covered tonight related to changes to the moratorium that folks should be aware of?
I think we've covered the most important. I could just recap to remember that there is an eviction moratorium in place, but it doesn't cover everyone. It only covers people who've done a declaration. If this is news to you and you have COVID economic impact, then you should go make a declaration. Check to make sure that all of those things are true for you. Document how you've given it to your landlord. And if you can make any kind of partial payment, talk to your landlord about it. If the landlord rejects the partial payment, just keep a record of that. Apply for rental assistance, which would also, one, it could satisfy the whole debt, and two, it shows that you're trying to get the landlord paid. And if you need help is available for you. Call us, go to Rentervention, go to CCLAD, and if you got court papers, when you get to court, ask for the ERP, the Early Resolution Program.
Well, I put LCBH's phone number in the chat one more time. Well, I think with that, we will call it a night. Thank you, Michelle, for
Thank you.
and just please, if you're a renter or a community advocate and needing assistance, please visit rentervention.com or call us at 312-347-7600. LCBH is in your corner with attorneys and social workers to help you get free legal aid and help you navigate systems for accessing the rental assistance. So please watch for emails for upcoming Tenant Thursdays topics, and like us and follow us on Facebook where you can get those updates as well. So on behalf of Lawyers Committee for Better Housing, we wish you all a safe and healthy evening. Good night.
Good night.